Welcome to a dialogue on accountability in the digital age, a dialogue with representatives of a global, multi-stakeholder community.
And I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Professor Dr. Gong Ke. We agreed, Professor, that I was allowed to call you by your first name, Ke. So, Ke, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. I have the great pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you on the accountability dealing with digital technology.
Okay, let me introduce you to the rest of the audience. You are the immediate past president of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, chairman of the academic committee of Nankai University, and executive director of the Chinese Institute for New Generation Artificial Intelligence Development. You are an electronics engineer with over 30 years experience, and you put this to good use, trying to help advance the United Nations SDGs. So again, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for your very kind introduction.
Now, Ke, I am an engineer myself. I went to university 40 years ago. And when I was educated as an engineer, accountability, ethics, I would say the soft side of our world was never, ever an issue. It was not discussed. It was not seen as part of what an engineer needed to know. Is that the same for you, or do you have a...
Exactly the same. I have entered the university in the year 1978, after the great Cultural Revolution of China. But at that time, we focused on technological theories and the techniques. When we heard about ethics, that's something dealing with philosophy. It's not our job. But today, we have to dealing with ethics and carry out engineering practice ethically, responsibly.
Do you have an idea more or less when this discussion began within the wider global engineering community?
Actually, I would like to remember in the 80s, last century, when internet reached out ordinary people. So digital technology, telecommunication with handphone and so on and so forth, it's not something for those experts, but for ordinary people. So this technology do give impact, deep impact to the daily life of ordinary people. I think at that time, people think about they may bring out some negative impacts. For example, for the elder people, they could not use the smartphone, then they cannot enjoy the benefit of it. That's okay, but if it is required everybody to use that app, that is not fair for those people. They don't have a smartphone or could not use it frequently.
Okay, so then the ethical side is brought to the discussion. I'm just curious. Do you see this was a question raised by the engineering community themselves, or was this a question raised outside, brought into the community? So who connected who?
I think both. Take the World Federation of Engineering Organizations as example. Actually, more than 10 years ago, we have worked on the code of ethics, the model code of ethics for all engineering organizations. At that time, the purpose is to guide the world engineer to pay attention to environmental responsibility of our engineering practice, and to treat people equally, no matter their social and economic status. So I think we have started this work in 2000, about 2009, 2010, and released that model code in 2010 or 11. And later on, we realized the more concern from the social community on the possible negative impact of digital technology, privacy, and so on and so forth. That began, I think, 2017, when AI, artificial intelligence, come into our life. People do realize that new technology, on the one side, is bring benefit to the people's life, but they need a big amount of data, and behind that data, there may privacies of personal, there may secret of a company, and so on and so forth. So we, at that time, we started a working group, I think in 2018, under our technical committee for emerging digital technologies, to take care about the ethical principles for using artificial intelligence and big data.
Okay. Quickly, because we're now discussing on behalf of the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age, that there's a strong link between ethical behavior and being held accountable. To what extent is accountability a discussion within the larger global engineering community?
To my awareness, we are not quite familiar with this concept, accountability, 10 or 15 years ago. And I think it is in this century, this word we have often heard at previous time outside of our community. And then when we talk to carry out engineering practice responsible, so we dealing with the issue of accountability. And when we discuss the basic principles for responsible conduct with AI and artificial and the big data in engineering practice, we have searched the literatures of research institute of United Nations, the different government and big companies. We find accountability is one of the most frequently used word.
Yes.
So we do think about how to bring these concepts into the code of engineering practice. Yeah.
Okay. And in your personal opinion, what do you think is the biggest threat for accountability today, linked to being an engineer?
In fact, it's not an easy job for us to allocate accountability to different engineering working position, because traditionally we believe technology is neutral, and if a engineer using that technology according to the handbook, according to its rules, that's no problem for this engineer. So accountability only dealt with when she or he violate the rules, violate the standards.
Yeah.
But now we think we have put the accountability to the early step when they are making the engineering planning, designing, product, produce the engineering tools, test the tools. In that steps, we try to introduce responsibility, accountability, transparency, and so on and so forth.
Okay, yes, because I wanted to make that remark where you say, I mean, in theory, technology is neutral. I understand that statement. Nevertheless, when we design systems, artificial system, AI systems, you see that they have a bias. You see that there is an issue with that technology. Sure. So that's the difference between putting it into practice.
Yes.
And could that be a threat for an engineer realizing, hey, we designed something with all best intentions, but in reality, it's not working as it's supposed to do. Now, is that the engineer's responsibility? Should he or she be held accountable, or is it the user? Who in that value chain at the end of the day should society look at?
My opinion is all people dealing with the planning, designing, developing, using, monitoring, managing, they have their accountability, but different. Yep. Just as you said, previously we think technology itself is neutral, but today is not always true. Yep. If we use the data with bias, if we use the bias of the data to train a AI algorithm, that may be produce a biased model. So that should be accountable to that design engineer, because they have to have the conscience to avoid a biased AI tool, and they have to take measure to de-bias the data and so on and so forth.
No, that makes sense. Now, moving on, you could make the argument that accountability in the digital age is a 21st century issue because of the recent development, fast development of digital technology.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why the Institute was founded at the instigation of UNESCO, because they saw that there was a growing gap between the legal and regulatory framework, which just could not keep up with that development of technology. So I realize your background is being an engineer. I still want to ask you the question. So is the solution to mitigate that gap still see how can we organize a legal and regulatory framework, or is this a 21st century issue which requires 21st century solutions outside solutions like legal and regulatory frameworks?
This is a hard question. And my understanding, the issue is very, very difficult for a legal system to regulate a fast-growing technology. So I think legal regulation is absolutely necessary, but they're always afterwards. Yeah. So we need make efforts to build a governance system, technical governance system, which is more dynamic, more effective, dynamic and effective. I think the base of such a dynamic system should at first build in the mind of scientists, technologists, engineers, and engineering managers.
So the role of the engineer and organizations like the WFEO could be almost an advocate for accountability by design. So make certain that it's not something you end the design and the construction with. No, it's where you start. It's
sure, of course. Yes. And we have to put these contents into the engineering education, scientific education, to tell them you are also dealing with ethical issues.
Yes.
And you have to keep this in your mind. In carry out scientific practice.
Now, is that the low-hanging fruit for the engineering community, or are there other things where say, hey, that's what we should be focusing on? Because education will help, but would you have other ideas as well in mind, or would that be the focus?
I think education is very, very important, and to build a engineer which have a responsible behavior on engineering practice, that should be start from the engineering education.
Okay. Now, one of the other issues with digital technology is it knows no geographic boundaries. So the fact you are in Beijing right now, I'm in the Netherlands. So this is a great example. We cross borders using technology. At the same time, we also see that different, I would say, geographies around the world have different perceptions how to deal with this accountability issue. Does it mean we have to try to find a solution which suits everybody? Or could you imagine regional differences how we should approach accountability?
I would like to say, on the one hand, we do need a global regulation for digital technology to safeguard the privacy and security and so on and so forth, because those data are across borders every day, every second. So we really need a global consensus. Based on global consensus, we need a global regulation. And I think United Nations should take the role to lead the consensus building and the regulation. But on the other side, we have to respect to the local culture, local tradition, and to allow the local government, national government, to have their own regulation based on the global one, because that is more or less dealing with the local cultural, historical, economical conditions, even political conditions.
And that's fact of life, that's reality. Now, assuming the United Nations or one of their agencies is going to lead this, and there are various choices to be you can make there. Who would you invite at the table? Who, which stakeholders should be there?
Oh, I think that if we talk the stakeholders of digital technology, I would like to say everyone almost, because everyone is dealing with data today, and everyone's data, their own data, it will be shared with others. And so that is really a need to engage different kinds of society to be part of the discussion.
Okay. Hey, no, fair answer, because it's affecting so many people and organizations out there. I got two more questions for you, Kay, before we have to go. First of all, how would a community like the Institute for Accountability in a Digital Age add values to such a discussion? What role should we take to resolve that issue?
I understand your institute is a research institute. So I do hope we need to have a solution, as we have mentioned previously, that the accountability is a part of a dynamic regulation system, governance system. So that is the first challenge I understand. The second challenge is that should be we have unified regulation, global regulation, but also accommodate diversity. This is strict regulation, but reflects multi-stakeholders requirement to be inclusive. That's not an easy job, but that's why we need institute research into like yours.
Okay, good, thank you. Last question before we go to the close. A couple of weeks ago, I had the honor to chair the session at the World Engineering Day to look at the future with ethical AI.
Yes.
So ethics
Yes.
and AI were brought together.
Mm-hmm.
What's the room for a future World Engineering Day to discuss accountability as a topic?
I think engineer, because they are the designer and user of the AI technology. So they should be a part of the discussion about the accountability. And they may offer their knowledge on the AI technology and AI application. That would be good to have a sound accountability system with the engagement of engineers.
Okay, got you. Hey, last question, Kay, before we go. Could you describe your ideal world?
Wow, that's
In the
very
context
good. It's a
being
very
an
good
engineer.
question. The ideal world, as a engineer, I hope the technology, engineering solutions will bring a benefit to all people, men and women, elder and younger, living in different parts of the world. So the great challenge we are facing too is the planet suffer a big danger from the climate change and so on and so forth. So we really believe engineers can play a key role together with all stakeholders to make a harmonized world, harmonization between human well-being and the planet, the healthy of the planet.
Sounds like, I mean, being an engineer myself, I am biased, but yes, I agree with you. Engineers will have a vital role to execute on that idea of the world we want to live in. So yeah, let's build that world together.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your time and sharing your thoughts and insights. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you and talk with you online. Hopefully we can find a time to sit together face to face.
Looking forward to that opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, good. Keep in touch. Bye-bye.